Hello everyone and welcome back to Dragalia Foundry, a fan channel where everything Dragalia Lost can be found. This video is going to be all about Chapter 24, Primal Strength, Part 1 of Dragalia Lost. This update to the main campaign released just a couple days ago at the time of recording, so if you want to walk away and avoid spoilers, now is your chance to do so. In this video, like with most of my story update videos, I'm going to share some gameplay footage from the latest chapter, and while doing so, I'm going to talk about what I thought about the chapter, share my general impressions, what I think is coming next, that sort of thing. So that'll be our plan for today. As far as gameplay content from this chapter, no new boss fights or anything like that. The quests are pretty standard fare, but they are on what at least appears to me to be a cool new map. So I don't think we've seen this one before. It's a desert setting, just like the chapter itself, but it also appears that we're on some sort of ship buried in the desert. So it kind of reminds me of that one level in Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword, and I like the aesthetic of this. Hope to see this map show up in future Kaleidoscape runs, especially now that we know that's going to be getting some updates as of the latest version update coming at the end of February. But anyway, as far as the story of this chapter, this one is all about our search for the burial grounds of the primordial great worms. We're headed to the former or fallen kingdom of Lefkos, where we find out Gatov was actually once the ruler, and Sheila, his daughter, and he play a central role in the story of this first part of the chapter. It's sort of a redemption moment for Gatov, and also an exploration of Sheila's character, since we hadn't really gotten much of that, if anything, in the story so far. We know that she was brought back to life using a fragment from the other in the Fairy Kingdom, much like Yuden was brought to life. But her experiment didn't go as well, unfortunately, and she was kind of a shell of herself, not able to speak much beyond a few utterances, and really didn't express a whole lot of personality, to the point that you almost wondered if maybe she was some kind of artificial life form from the point that she was introduced, even before we knew about how she had been shaped by the other. However, that aspect of her character and that aspect of the prince, Yuden, makes it so that they are relatively immune to the effects of black mana. And so when we arrive in the fallen kingdom of Lefkos in the desert, Gatov explains that this wasn't always a desert, but two countries, Lefkos and another, were at war for quite some time, and eventually that other country won over, but they too abandoned this place because slowly the land was sapped of all of its nutrients, all of its value, all of its life and vitality by a wellspring of black mana that was emanating near the burial grounds of the primal dragons. So the chapter centers around Yuden and Sheila going to that source of black mana because they're the two members of the party who have some immunity to that. Ilya kind of fills in the details on them having immunity because they have part of the other within them. And so they go forward and eventually find essentially Sheila's soul or heart, and her deep regret is what's causing that black mana to emanate in part. And so the goal of the chapter ends up being trying to reconcile what happened with Sheila and Gatov in the fall of their former homeland of Lefkos, or I guess once and always homeland, but former kingdom, fallen kingdom of Lefkos. And ultimately, we get some perspective on Sheila that we never had before, that she was a dutiful daughter of the kingdom and daughter of Gatov, really wanted to be able to help contribute in some way, but with the warfare between Lefkos and a neighboring state, she felt she was not really able to contribute in the war council, but instead went to help with domestic affairs, which included investigating this rift in space that was leading black mana to emanate near a lake bed. And so she goes to investigate it. She realizes that she's the only one not driven mad by it and not dying to it, and learns that she has some ability to manipulate it, and ultimately, unfortunately, chooses to try weaponize it to help her kingdom of Lefkos because she feels like that's the one way in which she can really contribute to an ongoing conflict. And so that doesn't work out. She passes away and her mother passes away. The kingdom falls to ruin. it's presumed that they're defeated by the enemy force ultimately, who takes up rule. But it's kind of sad that she put so much blame on herself and resorted to such a devastating type of weapon. I think in part because it's sort of presented as like a dichotomy, like it's either Sheila's fault or Gatov's fault, when war is actually really brutal. And so it's probably neither her fault nor her father's that they're in this horrible conflict and can't really do a whole lot, and just trying to protect their people and do what's right for their society. So I kind of felt bad for the predicament that she found herself in, the means that she ended up turning to, and then for Gatov, who has to kind of pick up the pieces in the wake of his hubris, where he was trying to take on everything by himself and not necessarily let others help him out. So we later find out in previous story chapters, but later in time from when this war happened, that Gatov eventually has to resurrect Sheila in the Fairy Kingdom and so on. And so this chapter is all about the bond between father and daughter. I thought it was pretty nice. I thought it was pretty well presented. Gatov has to overcome the black mana, eventually go back to the heart of the burial grounds for the High Dragons, and basically reconcile with Sheila and explain, you know, I wasn't a great father at times, and Sheila feels like she wasn't the best daughter and led to catastrophe, basically. But they make their peace with it, and Sheila's soul is saved from this black mana well. It returns to her body, so now she has kind of her personality back, and it appears as though she still had some consciousness in all that time that she was kind of locked up there. And so she's actually grown quite a bit and thought about her nature and her role and why she has some immunity to black mana. And it's explained by Ilya that basically she is a vessel of the primal mark. So just like Zethia, Xena, and so on, she has a connection to that special mana of the progenitor that makes her very powerful. So she's basically an Auspex, just like some of these other characters, and she's able to then use some of her power to quell that source of black mana and lead the way for the party to now eventually go to find the primal great worms. So that's pretty much what's likely to happen in part 2. If y'all saw the trailer for part 1 of this chapter, we did get the reveal of the look of all the primal great worms, so that was pretty hype. So you can definitely check that out if you want to. I'll post a link in the description below to the Nintendo mobile channel. So that's something I'm looking forward to. And besides that, I have to say the fit that Sheila shows up in after she's revived, she looks super cool. She looks kind of like a mage of some kind. Not that she didn't necessarily before, but I think that it's clear she's been given the Gala glow up at this point. So expecting to see a Gala Sheila in the future, when, you know, in the past we might have been given some of these characters as free story characters as the plot has them join our party. I think now we're more likely to see them as permanent alts or Gala adventures. It really feels like the game is just firing on all cylinders as far as releasing popular characters in permanent and Gala banners. So I expect that to continue. A lot of you pointed out in the comments of my previous videos that you think Housekeeper Pia is a Valentine's adventure. And honestly, I just never made the connection that her housekeeper outfit had anything to do with Valentine's Day. So I thought it was going to be a permanent alt. But now that y'all have repeatedly said that, I think that you're probably right. And that's probably going to be our next limited adventure here at the end of the month. We'll probably get a Gala Dragon though, and so not sure who that's going to be. It might be another Agito dragon, and who knows, there may be some other dragons there. In the next couple days we'll probably know for sure, but you know, there's still one humanoid great worm missing, so that's all I'm going to say about that. But I could see that that dragon making an appearance as an adventure, and I guess technically Cathodia's humanoid could happen one day. But anyway, y'all, that is pretty much going to do it for today. You can see here chapter 24 hasn't been added to Knott's notes yet. I think that's going to happen once part 2 is released. But I hope you enjoyed this chapter as much as I did. It felt kind of like a side arc to the main plot, but that was okay. I enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching. Take care, and I'll see you next time.